Welcome to 2025, and the first video on the gaming channel. Actually, this is the first gaming content I've made since 2021, I think. If you've been following me since the days I was making Pokemon and Call of Duty content, that stuff was pretty dry back then, right? For now, let's go ahead and talk about Modern Warfare. Call of Duty 2019 didn't require much guessing as to what the game was going to actually be when the reveal finally happened, from the rumors suggesting the game. Time to show you guys what I've been up to since. As you can surmise by the video title, I'm talking about Kuro Games' Wuthering Waves. And holy, Kuro Games outdid themselves on this game. Well, the game lore dumped early, and I mean really lore dumped. Throughout much of the 1.0 update cycle, from 1.0 to 1.4, the game found itself increasingly isolated in the Gacha sphere, but not for many reasons Wu-Wei haters would have you believe. No. Wuthering Waves began to significantly slow the pace of the story down, all while introducing us to new characters and removing that dependency on Chizia and Yang Yang, which, let me be perfectly honest, are very underwhelming characters. Yeah, sure, they're the first two you meet when you wake up, outside of Jinzhou, but they don't really offer much else to the story aside from teaching you the basic fundamentals of how to play the game. Where things get interesting is with Jinshi, the magistrate of the city of Jinzhou. Jinshi, alongside the introduction of Scar and the Fraxidus, makes for a very fascinating chronal-based storyline, with the Sentinel, Huang Long's deity, if you will, having been trapped by the Fraxidus, hoping to use its powers for their own gain. The fact that we still don't know what they were wanting with that power, and we're into the 2.0 Renacida storyline now, it's so fascinating and very mysterious. Spoilers ahead if you've not played the game, so fair warning. Sticking with the story aspects of the game for a while longer here, Scar's eventual apprehension makes you think the whole ordeal with the Fraxidus is over, especially once you free Jue and Mount Firmament. With an insane emotional performance from Rover, Jinshi, and Jue, you forget about the Fraxidus entirely as Jinshi's alien condition takes center focus, but a prophecy foretells of the eventual fight between Jue and its resonator, Jinshi. While the fight is a little underwhelming, it's the first real serious deterministic fight in the story, but the overall ethereal and heavenly aura of the fight takes you for a whole ride. The power of the Mount Firmament storyline quests are masterful though. There is a slow, decisive beginning where you're wondering what your role in the story is, a strong middle where you're piecing together the Fraxidus plans and making connections across Huang Long, a powerful rising action leads up to the climax within Mount Firmament, and a quick expedition once the fight is over. Or so you think. Until you play Chongli's companion story, a very mysterious character in of herself, you're left to think that the events of Mount Firmament have come to a decisive end, until you meet a wandering man inside the mountain claiming to have found a cure for his girlfriend's nearly incurable condition. Time within Mount Firmament is still unstable, and this leads us into Chongli's past, where we learn she wasn't always so in control of her resonator abilities, her flames. With skepticism about the man's claims of the secret behind immortality, you and Chongli head deep into Mount Firmament where you discover the source of the time discrepancies, a sonoral sphere that had been hidden within a game of Wei Qi. I won't spoil this questline any further, but the Fraxidus are still involved with Mount Firmament's asynchronous time issues, the very same ones that trapped the town of Hongjian within a time bubble. If one left this bubble, time would immediately catch up to them. Decades of lost years, frozen in time. It's an emotional story as you near the climax though, and only deepens the mystery behind who exactly Rover is. After that we have the Black Shores update and the Shorekeeper who monitor nations worldwide for signs of the lament. It's a pretty technologically advanced society, but this is also where another important resonator, Camelia's companion story takes place at, which also leaves you with more questions than answers as to Rover's true identity. Of course, combined with the chaotic main quest storyline of the Tethys system and a super intelligent AI, you're left in awe once you complete the questline. There are some incredible cinematics here though, making it well worth the hours-long storyline. Everything that happens in Huang Long to this point of the story in the 1.4 update are all interconnected, but that's when we finally received the 2.0 update. The Renacida Italian Renaissance-inspired update, and perhaps, actually unexpectedly, the region retains a very Middle Ages Europe fairy tale-like feel. Most notably, however, is the presentation of the Church, the Order, as the antagonists. But they're not alone. Early in the 1.0 storyline, we're introduced to another character, Frolova, who makes her real debut during the Carnival of the climax of the 2.0 story. She plays a pretty big role in the Fraxidus' plans, and her English voice actress does a phenomenal job. Tell me her voice doesn't either make you fall in love with her or send chills down your spine.
What a pity. The prophecy says the king will not take his final bow in this act. Reality beckons. Have you glimpsed the truth in this dream? 2 prophecies fulfilled, but the third? I await to see how you will rewrite it.
The final fight you have with her during the carnival isn't just for show, she almost foreshadows what her plans are. Alongside the very theatrical language she uses, it's arguably the game's best fight. But the ending leaves you wanting more. And that's when we find out she's working with Cristoforo, the visiting playwright visiting Raguna, whom you meet at the start of the Raguna-Rinascita story. The last thing I'll say to the story specifics here is the Montelli family, a wealthy family that essentially runs Raguna, with widespread connections all across Rinascita. Is this not beginning to sound very Middle Ages Europe? Don't even get me started on the OST and other little magical details of the region and story. If you thought that was a lot of story, it is, but it's good story. Perhaps some of the best I've ever seen in a video game. It's lighthearted when it wants to be, but it gets dark and gritty at times, and it kinda makes you take a second to absorb what just happened. At other times, it's purely mysterious and full of psychological puzzles. Namely, Changli and Camellia's companion quest are the most notable of these, as they do still have heavy reliance upon the main story. Then you have more innocent moments, like learning how to cook, which Wuwa wouldn't be a gacha game without cooking. If you want something more relaxed, try Encore's companion story. It might make you cry, just a heads up. It was a very emotional story. But enough about the story. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the fluidity of the combat system. I'll put some of my own gameplay up for this, but the whole system is perhaps the most fluid of any gacha game. Tower of Fantasy, Genshin Impact, Honkai Impact, and Star Rail, just to name a few of the big ones, there's no comparison. Unlike other games similar to Wuthering Waves, there is a dodge mechanic where if you dodge at the right moment, you gain an extra moment to deal damage that you can use to either counter, use an echo, parry, launch a heavy attack, or use an ult. Think of this moment as like you're moving in slow motion. The parry system is great because it gives you a chance to block an attack and temporarily stun most enemies. And this gives you an extra attack. It also weakens the enemy you're fighting and gives you an opportunity to swap characters when their intro skills are ready. Again, signaled by audio-visual cues. With Resident's abilities, the idea is to fill the aforementioned gauge at the bottom of your screen, which is essential to using Resident's Liberation, your ult attack. These are unique to each character and represent their personalities through various effects, animations, and elements, but the entire Resident's gauge is unique to each character. Some will feel faster or slower than others. It forces you to time your attacks and battle strategies wisely. For some fights, it's entirely possible to brute force your way through, but the many fights and trials within Rinascita force you to think. And this was kind of a major problem with Huanglong in the 1.0 updates. There was a lot of brute forcing and not a lot of thinking and puzzle. How do you counter after a successful dodge or parry? What attack is good to send a character in so that their intro skill parries an incoming attack? The same can also be said for outro skills as well. Finally, last but not least, definitely not least, are the animations and graphics. Each region is inspired by various other regions here on Earth. Huanglong, can you guess? Huanglong is inspired by China with its Sentinel Jue being a serpentine Chinese dragon. Much of the architecture and music are also very China-esque. Even the names of the characters are specifically Chinese. The landscape is also very diverse, with various docks and the harbors that hug the coastlines to mountaintops that break through the cloud layer below, leaving you with just a sea of clouds to overlook from your perch. Rinascita has this Alice in Wonderland vibe to it, where the echoes come to life and aren't just reverberations absorbed by your Pengu terminal. You can literally become a large plushy bear that punches through rocks, a small plushy animal that walks around collecting lost pages of a book in certain mini-trials. You can even play a game with a TD known as the Lifer in a secluded interior room of a large maze. But this one requires some thought, as victory isn't as cut and dry as you'd think. Of course, there's also the new flight utility that allows you to gain more flight stamina the more Rinascita you explore, and this is probably the most relaxing thing to do in the region as you soar above the seas of clouds, over top golden trees, staggering cliffs, and gothic architecture. Pointed arches, large stained glass windows, towering spires, and more. How do you feel about small European-like villages? Rinascita has them. Gargoyle-like echoes you can battle? Yep. Gondolas? Rinascita has those too. Waterway canals to the city of Raguna? Also, yep. Want an evil looking tower that's surrounded by ominous clouds? It has that too. Renacida is literally a medieval Europe fan's wet dream, and if you love the theater, not the movie theater, you'll love all of the thespian-themed dialogue that's present throughout the story. I'm only just scratching the surface here, as there's a lot more to explore about Renacida, as well as Huanglong, but I've spent more time on Renacida because it's so closely aligned with medieval Italy. Huanglong version 1.0 to 1.x doesn't have the same level of character or intensity of voice acting. In fact, many of the actors are not from the States. Voice acting is likely done in Europe, as that is quite a lot closer to China, where Kuro Games is located, than the US. In Huanglong, much of the voice acting was full of American accents, but you could hear other accents, such as British, surface every so often.
As fate has decreed.
Jinshi will serve your will.
In Renacida, the wide variety of European accents is allowed to flourish. While they're mostly UK-specific, Scottish, Irish, and British, you can also find heavier accents from time to time, like Azani or the owner of the mask shop where you're given a mask ordered by Carlotta.
Splendid performance. It's almost time for the final bow, but the symphony between us has only just begun its overture.
Of course, aside from all of the story, rich culture, and infinite amount of other things to do, there remains your companion, Abby. Even Tower Fantasy had its little Paimon-like character, Mia, but Abby is different and actually has useful insight from time to time, and isn't in your face all the time. Plus, Abby has a role to play in the identity of a rover who, unlike other Resonators, can wield both Spectro and Havoc type abilities. For those who finished the Renacida storyline, this should make you think about Cartethyia, who is supposedly Fleur-de-lis, but she was supposed to have died 20 years ago. But Fleur-de-lis can wield the power of the Sentinel and the Thromonian. That's all I'll say on that for now, but there remain many mysteries yet to be uncovered across Solaris 3, especially within Renacida. There are times where the game foreshadows certain events, but you won't know until you actually get there. There's a lot to be said about this game, but I'm gonna leave it at that. Wuthering Waves is a phenomenal game with some of the best writing and storytelling to come out in a very long time. The game is free to play on PS5 now as well, so if you're on the fence about trying the game out, stop hesitating and go play it if you like mobile gachas, have a PC, or own a PS5. Xbox users, I'm sorry. Microsoft doesn't love us, but I at least can play on PC. Who knows, if you have that extra change, it might be worth it to pick up a PC that can play these games. Especially because it won't be long until we get Ananta and Neverness to Everness. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again very soon with another game that's dear to my heart, but it also needs some serious new direction.